Welcome into the Jacksonville Jaguars franchise, where today we have our second offseason under head coach Madison Boston. And that's coming after a really good, though unfortunate, game for us in the AFC Conference Championship. In this game, our Jaguars and Buffalo Bills battled back and forth in their second matchup on the season. Our offense put up 288 yards. The Bills put up 315. But it was 6 points scored in the fourth quarter that ultimately decided the difference in this game. And arguably one of the biggest differences was the fact that Trevor Lawrence could not hit the pass on the final drive to get us into scoring range. Bills would tack on a late game field goal and walk away with the win, headed to the Super Bowl. That is exactly where we look to start off here today, right after this game and getting ready for our next offseason. We finished once again top of the AFC South. We went 12-5. We beat Kansas City Chiefs, the Las Vegas Raiders. We beat the Buffalo Bills during the regular season. We did not beat the Baltimore Ravens. So we are competing with the top teams here in the AFC. But the big concerns heading into this offseason is we have some aging guys here on this roster, and I think some of them are going to force some of our young guys into starting spots, starting with Eric Armstead. He's 31, going to be 32. How hard is that regression going to hit him, and will that force one of our picks from last year to step in? We'll talk about them in a second. Boye Oluokun, another one who's been fantastic for us. He's at a 91 right now with a coaching boost, 30 years old. He will probably see some regression. Could that force Hall, the rookie linebacker, into a heavier load? We also have to figure out the safety spot, as Darnell Savage and Andrew Wingard, who really hasn't seen any playing time with us, both are 28, going to turn 29. They are going to regress. But honestly, the biggest elephant in the room is the quarterback spot. Trevor Lawrence has not played well as a quarterback, and the aim today is to find his successor and come up with a plan to help us find that successor. Is it going to be someone in the draft? Or are we going to have to make a trade? Does someone become available in free agency? All of that is extremely important in helping us find our way through this next offseason. And I think a big question around Coach Boston is, can he draft talent that's going to provide a big impact on the field? Going through some of his biggest picks, we start with said Cole Hall, one of those players who might have to step in with the regression of Oluokun, again, depending on how hard that hits. Hall was selected early third round, and he had a first round talent. The raw skills are there. However, this season, he did not see much playing time, only 169 snaps. He did start 3 games, saw some time on special teams, but in his limited time out there, he didn't really provide that big of an impact. He showed signs of being able to make some plays in the backfield, 3 tackles for a loss and a sack. He struggled a bit in coverage. And if he is to eventually take over for Oluokun, he's going to have to see that improve. He's got the athleticism. He should be a solid tackler, 88. Block shedding is at a decent spot at a 78 for being 21 years old. Coverages, we're going to need to see some improvement. That can only happen if he does see some playing time, as he is a normal depth. Next up is Junior Alford, and he was one that did see a lot more playing time, or at least had a spot, a rotational spot. Another normal depth, so he needs to see some playing time. Again, he's got some raw talent to be both a pass rusher and a run stopper, good strength and speed for down the middle. We selected him with the second pick in the second round last year, so he essentially is about a first round pick. But even then, he only had 249 snaps. Now, opposite of what we had with Hall, Alford actually did do a pretty good amount with those snaps, had 4 tackles for a loss and a sack. He was making plays, but we just didn't see much of that playing field. And with Eric Armstead getting older, he might see more snaps. But I think the biggest letdown from that first draft class was tight end Maxwell Sexton. Very fitting for Madison Boston to select a tight end as his first player. And I don't think he has bad ratings. In fact, I think he has extremely good ratings. He's got decent speed, really strong hands. He could run block. The route running is very good for how young he is. His biggest problem is 78 injury. And you can tell down at the bottom with the ruptured disc, he has struggled with injuries. That is not something you want for a true first round pick, selecting him 27th overall. They do say he played in 17 games. We know that is incorrect. He did miss at least a couple. But even then, he only had 513 snaps. And considering that we ran a pretty tight end heavy offense, these are not the numbers you're wanting to see. And it's even worse when you look at his production. Only 19 catches, 213 yards. He averaged a first down a catch, which is great, but he just could not stay on the field. The good news for Boston is that management, they like what he's done so far. He's gotten the Jaguars into a Super Bowl window. They've offered a 3-year, $5 million extension. And that's probably due to the fact that he has created a dominant rushing team. 2,549 yards. Unfortunately, it's also the worst passing team in the league. That mostly due to Trevor Lawrence. Defensively, he's created a standout unit. Only 4,382 total yards given up on the season, which is about 2,000 less than the Indianapolis Colts, who've given up 6,255. And the front seven has given up the second least amount of rushing yards. Breaking the trend, the Jaguars are third least in points given up this season, again by that 1 point Jets 362. But they're right back on it with the second most amount of sacks, not going to be in second for amount of fumbles. Nor are they going to be in that category for interceptions. So we could do with a little bit more turnovers, but when we're getting these teams off the field quite easily 3 and outs, it hasn't really been that big of a need. Rounding out stats, let's go ahead and jump into the individual stats. Trevor Lawrence, who again played most of the season, 18 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He had a completion percentage less than 60. Taylor Heinicke came in and did pretty well for us in the postseason, rounded out the last game as well, 60% for him. 1 touchdown, no interceptions. He was really just a game manager. Rushing the ball, Taylor Heinicke, 1,147 yards and 16 touchdowns. Would have been more, but we let him sit the last 2 weeks. Trevor Lawrence, he ran for about 700, had 5 more touchdowns, but had 11 fumbles as well. Didn't really get Tank Bigsby that much involved. Hall ran around a little bit. And Levi Brown, another one of those young guys, a rookie. He didn't see much of a workload in the traditional running game. And with the lack of success we had passing the ball, the receivers definitely took a hit. And I would imagine that potentially some of these guys would look to move on to a team that could do with actually passing the ball if they don't get a new quarterback. Brian Thomas, 675 yards and 5 touchdowns. Gabe Davis, 631 and 7. Brenton Strange had to play a little bit more tight end for us, tight end 1 this year than expected, 463 and 5. I wish that they kept track of drops because that was a problem, especially at tight end for us. Travis Etienne had an additional 456 yards, no touchdowns for him. Devin Duvernay, not much of a workload in his 6th year as he's getting towards the latter end of his career. He might look to move on, 5 touchdowns for him. O-line wise, we actually did pretty good in limiting sacks. Doesn't mean, because they don't keep track here, that they didn't give up a lot of hurries. We had to bounce a lot, scramble a lot. That was due to, I feel, a lot more interior pressure. And Quinn Miners, while a great run blocker, not necessarily the best pass blocker. And we might need to figure out a future solution for center. Not sure if Ezra Cleveland is that. Defensively, Devin Lloyd led us in tackles this year. Aluakin probably would have if he stayed healthy. He did have a couple injuries this year. Savage, he moved around on this defense. He picked up a lot of tackles. PFL leader Trayvon Walker with 25. He had a really dominant year. Aluakin was second with 15. 14 for Hines Allen. Would like to see a higher production rate from him. Lloyd and Smith both with 10. Sack leader, we saw Trayvon Walker, then Hines Allen. We did get 5 sacks from Mason Smith. He should be taking over probably as the primary DT this season. Lloyd, 3.5, 2.5 for Aluakin, and a few more down the line. Interception leader, we do have Aluakin tied with Tyson Campbell. Both had 4. Jones, Cisco, and Ringo each had 2, and then 1 more for Walker and Johnson. And kicking, Cam Little was 100% on his field goal, a long of 53. He did, however, miss 1 extra point. Getting to the Pro Bowl, we'll run through this roster pretty quick. Only going to highlight our players. Travis Etienne Jr., running back 1 here for the AFC. And getting on through here, do we have any receivers? Probably not. No tight ends. Offensive line, we had a pretty big group. Quinn Miners ends up making it at right guard 2. No other offensive linemen. Defensive linemen, no. But we do get Trayvon Walker listed at left outside linebacker, though he was more of an edge guy for us. no linebackers, corner-wise, no one, and no safeties. We don't get kicker, punter, or returners, so we do have 2 guys make the Pro Bowl. Yearly awards we will also run through here quickly. Patrick Mahomes, MVP, not much of a surprise. He did throw for over 50 touchdowns. And John Harbaugh was Coach of the Year. Our Madison Boston finished 4th in that race. On the AFC side, Lamar Jackson, he takes Offensive Player of the Year. Mahomes finishes behind him. And for us, Travis Etienne actually breaks onto this list here, listed number 8. But taking it home for Duval is Trayvon Walker with Defensive Player of the Year. Offensive Rookie goes to Tremaine Best. And surprisingly, Maxwell Sexton does actually break onto this list, but he is down here at 8. Defensive Rookie of the Year is Jason Venable, and he actually had a really good game against us, a really good season. Best quarterback does go to Mahomes. And once again, surprisingly, Trevor Lawrence on this list probably due more towards his running rather than his passing. He did end up leading all quarterbacks in rushing yards. Best running back, Jonathan Taylor. We do not get it with Travis Etienne. I wish it had the stats here as towards why they ended up winning these. I would like to compare the two, but Etienne still had a really good year. Best receiver does go to Rashee Rice. No one for us on that list. Best O-line, Creed Humphrey. They also had Trey Smith on that list. For us, Walker Little ends up being 3rd. He didn't play, so I'm not sure what that's about. Maybe a pity vote? A 3rd chief also cracks this list with Joe Thuney. Defensive line-wise, Chris Jones gets it. No Jaguars for us. Best linebacker, Trayvon Walker. He takes home 2 awards this year. And on fact, Aluakin makes it down here at 10. Best DB goes to Sauce Gardner. No Jaguars. And best kicker is Cam Little. So we did pretty well in the yearly awards. As for the NFC, we'll run through these pretty quickly. Will Reichert, Amon-Ra St. Brown is offensive. And then Hutchinson defensive. So Lions seem to have a pretty good year. Teague wins offensive rookie, Golden defensive rookie. Best quarterback is Purdy. Running back goes to Kenny Walker. Best receiver, St. Brown takes home his 2nd award. O-line, Connor Williams. D-line, Hutchinson, his 2nd award. Linebacker goes to Jared Verse. And then DB goes to Witherspoon. But the year comes to an end with the Saints pulling off the win, taking down the Buffalo Bills 24-17. Chase Young is the Super Bowl MVP. And I wouldn't have never thought that the Saints would be in the running, considering how messed up their roster was at the start of this series. But it looks like in the first off season, they hit pretty big on their quarterback pick in Elijah Candidate. Right now, an 88 overall, obviously receiving some boost right now. A true 82, a star dev, played at Purdue. 6'3", 235, strong arm, really good short, pretty solid down the field as well. Plus, he packs a little bit of some mobility. Injury, though, that could be a concern for him moving forward with only 83. And wearing Drew Brees' number, I don't know how I feel about that, but it did bring home another Super Bowl for New Orleans. And if we're talking about big picks for him, they also drafted Freddie Teague, who might have been a 1st-round pick. In fact, I feel like he was actually taken pretty early on here. See where he was drafted, actually 8th in the 2nd round. So he was someone, if we were looking at running back, we could have picked up. Plus, he took home the Offensive Rookie of the Year. So a really good draft for them. Fill 2 big holes in their roster. At receiver, they have Olave, Shaheed. All in all, this is a very good-looking offense. John Kitchens, I think he was the tight end that we were going back and forth on if we were going to draft him or if we were going to draft Maxwell Sexton. And I think maybe we missed out here. 83 injury. He might have stayed healthy for us the whole season. I think raw talent-wise, we have the better tight end, but the health-wise, that goes to Kitchens. Now we have to go through these storylines here. Coach, wanted to touch base with you about off-season workouts. What have you got? Who do you want to talk to, Heineke or Davis? Well, Heineke might not be with us next year, so let's go with Gabe Davis. Coach, they told me you wanted to talk to me. Sitting in the office here, what are you focusing on during off-season workouts? He's probably focusing on bringing in a quarterback. That would be helpful. Going to work with my trainer on route running? I think that sounds good. Yeah, stick with the route running. Next up on our list is with the defensive coordinator, and it looks like we're going to have the same scenario here. We're going to go with Junior Alford. He's probably going to be stepping up to be one of the starters next season, so we need to get him prepared. And I think with his talent that could go both towards the pass rush and run stopping, I'm hoping we get one of those options just to further that. Probably power moves, pass rush moves, getting off blocks, just getting better at being a defensive end. Well, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all you need to do. So sounds good to me. I wish we had this opportunity to try to maybe improve injury for Maxwell Sexton. Because from the first draft, that definitely is the biggest cause of concern. We now move over to the media. Hello, everybody. Let's talk about how the next few months are going to look. What is our plan for this offseason? And that is just, in general, we need to upgrade this roster at a few key spots. Don't want to say win the draft. We're just going to make a splash here. A little bit vague. Of course, they don't like vagueness. Any specific positions? I do have a position in mind, obviously quarterback. Let's see if we have an opportunity here to try to find a way to success with this one. Normally a trap. We won't ask you to spoil your plans publicly, but they will be checking back at camp. So hopefully at that point we'll be able to have figured out our way to bring in a new quarterback, and hopefully that'll help out the morale. But before we can get free of these cutscenes, we've got one more. And I think it is the, would you change that about me? My agent has been telling me that my number one motivation is off. What is your motivation? Gabe Davis we're talking to here. Being close to home. I have no idea where he's from. Would you change that about me? Well, what are options here? I want you to care more about winning. I want you to care about being a scheme fit. Care about being a starter. Let's go with just focus on winning. That's the big thing here. We're trying to find that Super Bowl. We've come close a couple times. I feel like I trust you enough to take your advice. Motivation changed. Let's follow his advice. We'll change his number one motivation. And that will finally take us to some actual off-season action here, where we have to decide a couple different things here. Re-signing players and fifth-year options. We currently have $48 million in cap. Now, with these options, that is going to push money down the line. It's not going to affect us this next season. And it looks like we have two options, both of which on the offensive line, both of which could be starters for a long time. It would be $10.6 million for Broderick Jones, $13.3 for Antone Harrison. Now, I like Harrison. The biggest problem with him is that he comes with a lot of penalties. But the star dev, he's 24 years old, and he is a terrific pass blocker. Run blocking could be a little bit better, but he's a left tackle. He's protecting our quarterback's blind side. And while we bring in hopefully either a rookie or a young quarterback to take over here, I would like to keep him clean. So I think with these options, even for Broderick Jones, I think we accept both of these. Jones for a different reason, star dev, young, that's the same. But he's a pretty good finesse blocker, and that is what I think has helped our running game be so dominant. So while we have ETN in his prime, we're going to try to keep this offensive line either together or improve it, again, most likely at center. So the first two moves we are going to make are to accept these options here for fifth year. Now, these could be kind of used as a tag and trade for the future as well if we end up getting some other talent. Devin Duvernay, I've hinted at this the last handful of episodes. We are going to move on from him. 28 years old. He didn't really see that big of an impact on our scheme, really. So moving on from him. Brevin Jordan was a good gap player for us, but I feel like we could find his kind of talent in the draft even late. I would have liked to bring in some of these young guys like Ben Garcia, who was a UDFA signing, 70 overall, but he's looking for $8 million for 2 seasons. That's not even close to going to be able to happen. We might add some of these guys back later. Gibson, moving on from him. McIntyre, he's in the same spot as Garcia. Andrew Wingard, moving on from, might be completely restarting at strong safety. Muma, we can find that talent probably in the draft. Luke Fortner, he's been just depth at this point. We'll let him move on. Josiah DeGuara, he's done a great job filling in for us. Jaron Hall, we'll look to move on from him as it stands right now. Taylor Heineke, he's down to a 62. We'll move on from him. Appreciate what he did. Logan Cook at punter. Now, here's someone that we might look to re-sign just to not have to worry about it. Offer him 2 years, make this an even $3 million, and he will sign. So, for the most part, we keep a lot of money as we head into open free agency. But now we get the news that our offensive coordinator has been hired away from us. So that is pretty impactful for us. And as we're looking to mold our offense around a new quarterback, perhaps we need to find a quarterback guru here. We still have our defensive coordinator in Mark Andrews. He doesn't have that many talents unlocked, just one for the full blitz, two for the defensive line guru. But let's see what options we have for the offensive coordinator and what scheme we would be looking for. Someone who is a little bit more of a zone style. Brian Warner is a multiple zone, would come in with 84 points. Doesn't have that many talents unlocked either. Nick Gregory, he's a vertical zone, and he does have 3 talents for the offensive line, nothing to help quarterback. Steve Parsons, vertical zone again, and his talents are spread out between halfback, the offensive lineman, vertical threat, so that could be potentially receiver or quarterback. More power here with Malcolm Brooks. Air raid, not going to fit what we're looking for. A multiple zone, again with not that many talents. In fact, none of these guys really have that many talents. But if we do look at Bill Duncan, he does have the most amount of coaching points with the 90, but he is a blank slate. If we view his talent tree, he has open field moves, which is not going to help out our quarterback. It would just help out receivers or running backs, pocket passing, and offensive line guru. So it would continue helping out the O-line. We get to the pocket passing. We can look to upgrade towards the quarterback side. And with an extra 90 points for our coaching points here, this could be a pretty solid option, and we can mold him how we want. So I think with that, we will be hiring Bill Duncan. With vertical zone, that means we should probably spread out our offense a little bit more, and that might help with our tight end issues as well. So for now, we're going to hire Bill Duncan, our new OC. But now is where the first domino should fall in our hunt to try to correct our quarterback situation, as open free agency has arrived. And again, we're coming in here with just over $45 million, and the number one player is a punter in AJ Cole. So not a great sign when it comes to quarterbacks. We take a look here. You have some mid-tier options in Ritter, Kenny Pickett, Gardner Minshew, but none of these guys are going to be true future building blocks. Someone like Sam Howell does have some speed with 82. If we want to stay with a younger player, he would be the only quarterback that would fit into that spot. But if in total we don't really have a quarterback that's going to fit what we want as a future long-term starter, perhaps bringing in someone like a Geno Smith would fit as someone that fits the scheme that we currently run, but is also a mentor. And on top of it, he's only looking for about $8 million, so that could be a really good option. He doesn't have extreme interest in us, however. As it stands, no other team has very much interest in him. If we take a look at his card here, he's just a normal dev quarterback in his 14th season. He does not have a strong arm. His accuracies are pretty low tier, fitted towards down the field passing, but he could scramble the ball. The next couple mentors, they're going to be Kirk Cousins, a 68, or Jameis Winston, another 68. So it seems like if we are to bring in a quarterback, which I do think we should do, Geno Smith is our only option at this point. There's not a lot of teams interested, so we are going to give a low ball offer here. Make this 7.5, so even less than $8 million for one season. We'll see if he decides to come here to Duval. Now, if we are going to have to look for a quarterback in the draft, we may not have that many draft picks. One of our needs is at slot receiver, and this is actually a pretty good top end for the receiving market. Jameson Williams is available at 25 years old. He does, however, have 7 teams interested. His interest isn't that high. There is Wan'Dale Robinson, one team interested in him. You could go with another vet, team up Lockett and Geno perhaps. Or do we try to bring in Mike Evans and get another 1,000 yards out of him? Only at 85 speed would be a big body slot kind of target, fit a tight end kind of role for us. And I was interested in just seeing what the route runnings look like here. And I think someone like Mike Evans would be extremely fun for us to try to use, just providing even more talent for a young quarterback. He does have the mentor trait as well, 33 years old. No one interested in Mike Evans. I think another 1-year deal here. Again, no one quite interested. We're going to lower that salary. We'll bump up the bonus. We'll make this a $9 million offer for Mike Evans. Now, I was interested in taking a look at the tight end market as well. Unfortunately, none of those big names really hit the market like I was hoping. A older vet that would give us a little bit of time to figure out Maxwell Sexton. So for now, we're not going to make any offers here at tight end. Now, this would just be something fun for me personally, bringing in Ivan Pace Jr. Only a 79 though at 25 years old. Again, as a Vikings fan, would love it, but we're going to move on from him. And at the actual strong position, no one of high regard here either, so that might be another draft situation, maybe a trade. Daxton Hill is available, though not much interest in us. One team has given him an offer. 6 foot, 191, 25 years old, a hybrid type, which I do like. He's got the speed. Tackling is not that great. Hit power is all right. Would he be able to play a little bit of strong safety for us in that same role that Darnell Savage played? I think before we would make an offer here, we need to check in on some regression. And for Savage, he did lose 16 points, some of which coming to his cover rating. So looking at these, he does still have about 5 better zone coverage. Man be sitting about the same spot. Tackling is about at the same spot. So it would be a move that would be kind of a unilateral move. We could still keep Darnell Savage, play the younger guy to hopefully get a little bit more progression from him, and leave the draft a lot more open for us to just pick BPA after making a move potentially for a quarterback. Now, with no other big regression to key starters, I think we could come on back here to Daxton Hill. Would be about the same overall. He is on the younger side. I would be up for a 3-year deal here, even if we do end up finding a star safety potentially late in the class. This is still a tradable contract if he decides to come here. Jaguars are not historic champions. We don't have a mentor at the position, but maybe Darnell Savage would be if we move him to that spot. But I think that is what we're looking at here. We're only going to make 3 offers, and we are on top for all of these guys. So let's put in the offer, first round. And Geno Smith has decided that he is coming to Duval. So we at least have a backup quarterback option for whatever reason. And if we don't find anyone, we don't necessarily have to move on from Lawrence, though that is still the plan. Now, as for Mike Evans and Daxton Hill, we are still on top for both of them. So we're just going to evaluate one more time. They have decided, and we land all 3 of our free agents. And again, this is probably where we're going to stop it. That's a pretty good free agent mark here. We bring in a starting-ish caliber quarterback in Geno Smith. Daxton Hill might be a starter for us, and Mike Evans could play a little bit in the slot or outside, and we can move around some of our receivers. All in all, that should help match a little bit more of that vertical zone offense. So getting to the nitty-gritty here of what are our options at quarterback then? In this draft class, it is quarterback heavy. We have 2 top 5s and then 4 first-round talents around 1 to 2, and then it's going to drop down to probably guys who will never see the field. But we have to decide if any of these guys are true options for us. By the looks of what we're seeing here, just taking a look at 40 time, is maybe Jeff Polk, a projected first-round talent, could be fast enough. You're then going to have Adrian Truman, who runs a 4.72, and then you have Will Allen, a 4.66. The round 1 to 2 talent in Justin Adkins runs a 4.81. Now, what we could do if they don't have good enough passing ability is also just take one of these more pocket passers, and we could bring in a quarterback, or we have a quarterback in Geno who could run a little bit more of those options. It would just be more of a package situation. Looking at each of these guys individually, we start at the top with Seth Tobin, a projected top 5 quarterback who's 6'4", 226, 21 years old, out of Virginia Tech. Again, he's not fast, but he does have elite strength, elite throw power, and with that, he also has some pretty solid accuracies. Deep is A to C, medium B to D, and short is B. Injury rating, always important to take a look at, and that is a C to an F, so we've got to keep him pretty clean. But he does have good play action, which would team up well with a strong running game. And if he's not going to be that mobile, it's good to know that he actually has a pretty quick release, fast over-the-top motion, does well to avoid sacks by throwing the ball away, and he typically throws the ball away at the first sign of pressure. I don't know if that part is good, but all in all, we take the fast motion. The next option is Thad Cousins, who's 6'6", 230, 23 years old. He played at Kansas State. Very much a strong arm, elite throw power, elite strength, slightly faster than the previous quarterback, and we know his throwing accuracies. A deep, B for both medium and short. Play action, though, is an A. Injury rating for him is A to B, so you'd be on the safer side with him. And ultimately, he might be my favorite option of these two quarterbacks. That doesn't mean he's the only options. We're just now into the round one projection. Kevin Pound, 6'3", 228. He's another pocket passer with elite throwing power. Again, slower than the previous quarterback. He has a great deep ball, but everything underneath is concerning. His injury beat a D, and he doesn't really have anything that stands out over the other two. Jeff Polk, talked about him. He has a little bit more speed. 6'3", 220, 22 years old, out of Baylor. And he has elite throw power while still running that 4.8. And his accuracies are pretty solid, but fit more towards the underneath. A to B injury. So I like him more than the previous quarterback, and I would put him up in that same kind of category as the first two. It's just a different style of quarterback. His throws are going to be shorter, which if we're going with play action as we have been, throwing on the run, he would be a great quarterback for it, with throw on the run being an A and under pressure being an A. Aiden Truman, 6'1", 225, 21 years old, out of Purdue, one of the faster ones of the bunch. Throw power is going to take a step down. It's at great. And his accuracies, though, are still pretty good. Not as good with throw on the run or throw under pressure. Injuries a B to a D, but he has some good play action. He wouldn't be a bad quarterback. In fact, I think there are a lot of different options that we have here, which makes potentially moving up and down this first round a lot more doable. For our last option of first round talents, we have Will Allen, 6'1", 232, 23 years old, out of Cal. He is a scrambler archetype, so he has that 4.66 speed, fastest of the bunch, with elite throw power. His accuracies, again, we don't know what that medium is. It's either a B or a C. Play action is pretty good. Injury is a concern, D to an F. I feel like you're just going to have that when it comes to scramble type quarterbacks. He is on the shorter side as well, 6'1", but a good size at 232. And then the last of the potential starters, you have Justice Adkins. He's 6'3", 230, 22, out of South Carolina, a strong arm quarterback who runs a 4.8. Elite throw power, so a lot of strong arms here. You have that deep ball again, but you don't have as certain of the short or medium. Throw on the run isn't there or under pressure. Play action is horrific. Injury concerns are medium. The other spot that I would still like to take a look at to see if we find any hidden talents are going to be at the safety spot. There is PJ Strait around 1. He's actually a top 5. Then you have some guys here in the round 1 to 2 that are actually around 2 to 3. Hitchens and Shepard, they both step up to around 1. But it doesn't look like anyone late here at free safety is a hidden gem. We look over at the strong. We might have a couple of those opportunities. Terrence Bowie around 1 to 2, a true top 5. He is a hybrid archetype. At 6'2", 208, 21 years old, played at Washington. Runs a 4.48. He has pretty good bench as well with 17 reps, putting him at 8. We take a look at the skills. Man coverage is there. Zone coverage is a C, but man is what we're looking at primarily for the strong safety. He could tackle. Injury, that's rough though, at a D to an F, which is maybe why he's fallen a little bit on those projections. And it looks like the next best option would be Terrence Yancey. He's a guy who I've had interest in. He does go up around 2 to 3 to around 1 to 2. Another hybrid type guy, 5'11", 210, 23 out of Louisville. 4.42. He's the fastest of the bunch with better strength to his game. And he's got the A man with the C zone. B block shedding. Injury though is at an A. So with that, I feel like I would favor Yancey over the other guy. And we might be able to pick him up later, which means less trading around altogether. There are some safety options for us, even though we did just sign Daxton Hill. Another potential area for us to take a look at is at tight end. I know we just spent a first round pick on one, but if there are again some options in the later rounds, we'll definitely take a look. I'd like to have a little bit of some run blocking mixed with some hands. And there are some possibilities here in the middle. Kevin Colon would be one of those guys, a vertical threat. The route runnings, however, not very polished. There's some question around it, especially the short route running we know isn't very good, with that being a D. You get a really good run blocker, A, with Theo Wiggins. He has good spec catch. Route running could be pretty good. Hands could be pretty solid as well. And he is a day 3. That is someone to keep an eye on. So we'll add some of these guys to our list as well. Now, if we are looking at potential guys down the middle for center, there is Will Walker. He's someone that we've had an eye on. A pass protector, which would help us out. We've had a lot of pass protection issues down the middle. Pretty solid in terms of strength. Overall, a pretty good athlete. He's just not going to provide much from the running game, but the passing game, he looks to be really good. If we're looking for someone that might be a little bit more balanced, there is George Davis. Now, he is listed at left guard, but spent some time at Georgia playing center. 6'3", 320, 22 years old. He's very strong. He's got a lot of mobility for his size. He's got the A run block finesse, with the pass blocking all being pretty solid, leaning towards the finesse blocking. But he's also got really good lead block with an A, pretty good injury gap there with a B to a D. Hopefully, again, that's on the higher side. Impact is there. In a round 3, he would be a pretty solid pick. It does give us a pretty good look at what we're looking at here. And when it comes to quarterbacks, Thad Cousins, probably the top guy on the list in terms of taking into account their rankings as well. He's projected to go mock draft 4 here, which is not 100% accurate, nor is mock draft 5, a number 1 pick to the Cleveland Browns. Next quarterback that is expected to go is outside of the top 10. In fact, these guys, they are dropping down the list, and we are all the way in the mid-20s and into the 30s. So it doesn't even look like there would be another first-round quarterback. I don't know if that would be accurate here. We might have to wait till we get to mock draft 5. And it turns out that was just a week away. So right to it, and now we've had a change here at the top quarterback. Now they're expecting Seth Tobin to go first, which I would be more okay with. I like the previous quarterback in Thad Cousins a little bit more. But either way, it does look like Cleveland is looking for a new quarterback. Did it change where these other quarterbacks are expected to go? Yes, now Thad Cousins has dropped down here to 10. Did he change his face? No, I just didn't look at it the previous time. All right, so now it has the Giants going quarterback with Thad Cousins. If we continue down this list here, any more quarterbacks expected to go in the first round? Kevin Pounds expected to go to Carolina. He was an interesting quarterback, but the medium and short accuracies were a put off for me. Any more quarterbacks on this list? No, and we're selected to go at 29. So there could be a quarterback just waiting for us, and we would not have to make a trade unless we really think that we want to move up and go after Thad Cousins. I just don't think his speed matches what we're looking for. We've relied a lot on quarterback scrambling to help move our offense down the field, and running a 4.99, that's just not going to quite cut it. So I think what we need to do is, when it comes time to choose the quarterbacks that we want information on, we need to take a look here at these 3 options. All of them provide a pretty good look at their accuracies. When it comes to throw on the run, however, Jeff Polk, Will Allen, they fit that better. Not so much with Aiden Truman. So it looks like I might be leaning a little bit more here on Jeff Polk being my favorite target. And I think his speed of the 4.8, 4.79 would be enough that he would be able to scramble around a little bit. He wouldn't be a burner by any means, but is very, very serviceable. And you mix that with elite throw power, plus a compact, fast traditional motion, I think he would be a great option for us. He plays well inside and outside the pocket, avoids sacks, gets rid of the ball at first sign of pressure, and has a tight spiral. There's not a bad thing to note here about Jeff Polk. So with that, I think it's time for us to move down the line here, get to where we get a little bit more information, and make our decision on what we plan to do. And we do find out the information we were looking at for Jeff Polk. Unfortunately, he goes from a round 1 to a round 1 to 2, which fits what the mock draft was telling us. If we take a look at him with a now filled out card, is there anything that we don't like here? Well, carrying is a D, might cause some fumbles, but he's got the play action, throw on the run under pressure, really good route running short. I mean, everything looks like he should be a higher grade than what we are seeing here. I also added to the list George Davis. We just talked about him, the offensive lineman balanced guy in the round 3 to 4, and he moves up to a round 1 to 2 projection. And he is exactly the kind of player we were thinking he was going to be. Pretty well balanced, but definitely fitted towards the finesse. But the power isn't that bad. A C, very doable for a starting spot. He's 22 years old. I think he could be someone that could definitely move and play center. The last guy we took a look at was Theo Wiggins, and indeed he is a day 3 talent. Now we still could use with adding a tight end, 6'4", 242, 22 years old, out of Oklahoma. He's a very fast tight end, ran a 4.56. He's got pretty good strength as well. He just doesn't provide any pass blocking, which we don't need. Injury is a concern at a D, and that might push me a little bit off here. The run blocking is there, the catching, the hands, everything looks pretty solid. We'll see if we decide to go his way late. But I feel like we've got the information we need, so we could go ahead and start this draft. And there are 3 quarterbacks to give us a cushion from when Polk would go, and I still think Polk is our guy. But let's take a look at who's going to be the first quarterback to go for the Cleveland Browns. And they select Seth Tobin. So mock draft 5 is correct here with that first pick. The other quarterback we liked, again projected to go to the Giants, is still there. Commanders, they go Khalil Joyner, outside linebacker, the Dallas Cowboys. They select Joe Wooden, right tackle. Getting to number 4, the Titans. And they select fellow outside linebacker Troy McMullen. So 2 right outside linebackers go in the first 4 picks. Rounding out the top 5 are the Broncos. And they go Isaiah Richmond, left tackle. As for our division rival, the Colts, they go left outside linebacker Michael Lloyd. Falcons up next. Nicholas Becker is their selection, another left tackle. And the Dolphins, they select the first interior defensive lineman, Terrell Drummond. Getting close to 10, where they expected that next quarterback to go. Patriots, they select running back Darius Bennett. And again, if mock draft is correct, Giants will have themselves a new quarterback. And indeed, it is Thad Cousins. So far, board is falling as expected. We're going to start to move through these a little bit quicker till we get to our pick, and hopefully our guy is still there. And we're to the Cardinals. Now, they were expected to go with a quarterback. Before we get to that point, I'm just going to note a couple things here that have been rather interesting with this draft. We have 2 different Wolves in the first round. Tommy Wolfe went to the Bucks, a tight end. WOLFE. To the Bears, you have strong safety Dentrell Wolfe, WOLFF. You also have 2 Blades. A running back, Terrence Blade, went to the Chargers. DeMar Blade, right tackle, went to the Jets. You also had several first-round running backs, which was just very interesting to me. Well, let's take a look to see who the Cardinals select. And it is Kevin Pounds. That means we are 2 selections away from our pick, with our main guy still on the board here. We go next. It's a cornerback, Shaquem Black, going to the Chiefs. And one of the best teams from the AFC last season in Baltimore. They select Jimmy Davis, a running back, and we are on the clock. Now, if the board itself speaks true, then Polk is the best available player here on the board. There are only 3 round 1 talents left, and all 3 of which are quarterbacks. So while it's possible that we could look to trade down, I think we don't mess around and we get our quarterback of the future. Jeff Polk is the selection, and hopefully it's a good one. Now, the crowd is cheering for the new quarterback here. They were done with the play of Trevor Lawrence. We'll work out a deal with him at a later point. What number will Polk wear? Will he help this offense succeed passing the ball? Well, he is a B- grade. He was rated 42. We selected him 29 overall. Again, he excels with the mid-range throws, stays calm when throwing under pressure, and maintains accuracy when throwing on the run. And he is a hidden dev, 78 speed. I expected a little bit more there, but he does have 94 throw power. So we still might need a speed-specific quarterback to bring in with certain packages. But the name of the game here is simply drafting BPA. So we're going to advance to our next user pick. But the hope is that the safety we were looking at is still available. So let's go take a look at what all of our options are. If we jump straight on over to, I believe he was a strong safety, Terrence Yancey is still available. He is a true round 1 to 2. The other talent we were looking at, George Davis, is also available, a round 3 to 4, so he might be around a little bit longer. We do only have that 3rd round pick. That's going to be a good bit of distance, so we may not land him, but but he's not a major need. If we're looking at just overall talent, it looks like some of the other quarterbacks are still there. Aiden Truman still sitting around. A safety that dropped. Another safety, Rashad Shepard, he did improve. He is a true round one talent. We take a look at him. Hybrid, 5'11", 218, 22. He's got a lot of speed and pretty decent strength as well. Very similar style to what we're looking at. He was just the one that had the injury concerns. There is a receiver available in Justin Cash, round 2 to 3, a true round 1 to 2 talent. He's a slot archetype. We do need a future guy there. He's got some good speed. Not a whole lot of strength to his game, a pure athlete with really good short route running at an A. He's not a down the field guy. Fits a little bit more with our quarterback. Release is horrific, but he's got good catch in traffic. I think he's an interesting player if we had an extra second round pick. But I think we are going to go with Yancey. I think he provides exactly what we're looking for here. So we're going to hit on at least 2 of our main targets. Terrence Yancey, the next man up, selected 61st overall. And the War Room is loving it. Boston, he's really banking on hitting on a few more of these selections. Yancey, he wants to go to Duval. And he's another B- grade. However, he's ranked number 30 overall. We drafted him at 61. How that's not an A, I don't know. He's got good instincts to read and diagnose plays. Rangy, effective in zone coverage, despite that being a C grade. A sure tackler. And a normal dev on him. I was hoping for another hidden. Obviously, everyone wants that. 92 speed. He should be able to get out there and make some big plays for us. So at this point, there's only one guy that I really know of left that I want to go after. We'll see if the guard is available and if we move him to center. If not, we still have our starter in Cleveland. So let's move to our next pick, which is actually going to be on the earlier part of this round. If I take a look here, though, Falcons, they took him 2 selections before us, George Davis. Well, we might just have to take a look at him later. But where do we go now? We're just taking a look here at the big board. It looks like the receiver we had some interest in, he's already went. And a lot of these guys that are still on the board, they're going to be a little bit more of uncertain talent. But we might have got a little lucky here with Greg Burgess. 6'2", 318, 22 years old, listed again at guard. Played at Penn State. He might be able to fit a good role for us at center. Overall, a pretty solid athlete. He's got some pretty decent strength, especially for the center position. Good lead block. Impact is there. Injury a little bit concerning, C to an F. But he's got some pretty solid pass blocking. He might be a slight step below Davis, but all in all, he could be a pretty solid option. Now, I don't feel like this team is in need of defensive linemen, but Rakeem Griffey is available, a round 2 to 3. A speed rusher who's 6'5", 302, 22 years old, played at North Carolina. He runs a 4.78, 4.73. Good strength, 31 to 32 bench reps as well. And he has A finesse moves with B block shedding. We could look to get a lot younger here and start to move on from some of our older vets at this position. Again, neither the offensive line or defensive line is an area of need, but he looks to be a very, very promising prospect, and I think is at the top of my board. Now, at linebacker, there are a couple promising options here. You got DeJuan Goings, who has some good cover ratings, A zone, B for man coverage. The block shedding needs some work, but could be a solid guy for the future. There's also Stephen Forbes, who fits in that same category. A little bit less of the zone coverage, better pursuit, but he has the worst block shedding ratings. But this could be a good option for our next 3rd round pick, perhaps. But ultimately, I don't think we could pass up on a guy like Rakeem Griffey. So we're going back to the DT, adding talent to that group. And if this isn't above a B-, I don't know what else to do. And there it is, B+, though he's ranked 74th. We selected him at 73, so to me that's an average selection because we were basically right on it. Maybe that's how this system is supposed to work. Either way, he uses power and technique to shed blocks, too quick for some pass protectors, and he consistently shows high-level instincts. And with that, he's a normal dev, but with 80 speed, 86 strength, I still think he'll be a really good guy for us to add to the rotation perhaps as we get younger up front on the defensive side. And we don't pick again until later on in this round, so let's take a good jump down to it. and go take a look to see if perhaps maybe that offensive lineman's still there, maybe one of the linebackers. I think I saw one of the tight ends that I was interested in Colin, did end up going, which leaves Theo Wiggins still there. We'll see if we come back to him at a later point. But the right guard, he did end up going. And the craziest part, Aiden Truman is still on the board here, a round 1 quarterback. You also have Justice Adkins, so they just didn't end up panning out. As for the guys on this board, nothing really sticking out here. Everyone either below their talent grade or meeting their talent grade. And the linebackers we were looking at too, they've also gone. Where we're going to go is more of talent that we know is locked in here and fits the mold of what I like at corner in George Boss. A round 3 to 4, true talent round 3 to 4, but he is 6'4", 195, 22 years old. He played at FAU. He's going to come in with some less than ideal speed, but I think he has some skill sets that might help make up for that. He's got good tackling. He's got really good press. He's got B for his zone coverage. He just struggles in zone. That's a D, with play recognition being an F. At this spot, I think it's a solid option. And with no one else standing out around this board here, we are going to go with George Boss, selecting him, adding him to a pretty thin cornerback group. We did only have 4 on roster. He is a C grade, though he's ranked 81 and we picked him at 93. So I don't know, but he's sticky in man coverage, good punch in press coverage to disrupt routes, and a willing, dependable tackler, and that's all we could ask for. Normal dev for him, 88 speed is not awful. He's got 91 acceleration. It may not become a true outside corner, but maybe someone who could play some slot. And as we get to the 4th round, Aiden Truman finally ends up getting selected. I was considering just drafting him here in this next round to be a backup quarterback and potentially a trade possibility for us, but he ends up going to the Dallas Cowboys. Let's not skip our pick. Let's take a look at the board. What is available, and the top quarterbacks have finally gone. We have a handful of receivers and cornerbacks. But here is a player that might be able to do a job. Rayshawn Hartwell, an agile right guard, 6'4", 314, 22 years old. He played at San Diego State. Fits a lot of what we're looking at with these other offensive linemen. He's got some pretty good blocking. Pass blocking is there, fitted towards finesse. Might have the same exact ratings when it comes to run blocking. Pretty solid lead. Injury, possible concern, but I think that's a solid offensive lineman here. And in the 4th round, we are not going to skip on solid offensive linemen. Hartwell is our next selection, and he is a B- selection. 49 overall, drafted at 111. Shows good technique when attacking by speed rushes. Shows good technique when run blocking. Best fits a zone run offense. That's kind of what we're going to be going with. And he is a hidden dev. 87 strength. That should be solid at center. If we decide to play him there, we'll see where he best fits. And we do have one more pick here in the 4th round, so let's jump on over to it. And again, we're just gonna take a look to see what best options we find here sitting throughout this class. Once again, we found another guy here for our defensive line, and area that we could look to get still younger at. Taylor Wooden, 6'4", 316, 23 years old, listed as a run stopper, played at Ole Miss. He's going to come in running about a decent 5-second 40. Bench reps aren't too awful either. And he's got both block shedding and power moves. Finding a guy here mid to late 4th round with duality as a defensive lineman, I think that is a must select. So we will pick him up, and he is a D rating. So probably our worst selection here. 295, we drafted him at 120. He does show good anchor. I'm pretty sure people are booing in the background. Strong push on film. Wrecks havoc when able to disengage from run blocks. Finesse moves need work. And a normal dev, 66 speed, 88 strength. And with our next pick, we're actually going to tag together 2 7s, trade it to the Denver Broncos, and bring in some depth for our edge rush in Ellis. I was looking to add some young talent to this group because we only had 3 outside linebackers currently on roster. Jonah Ellis comes in his 3rd year out of Utah, and he's a pretty well-balanced edge rusher, 6'2", 248. He's on a slightly lighter side, but he's got 78 power moves and finesse, 79 tackle. He's got 81 speed. We could work on the strength a little bit, though that is low at a 74. As we now find our way to late on in this draft, we still have 3 more selections if we want to use them. We'll see what our options are, but I feel more comfortable at this point taking shots on guys. That last pick that didn't land too well for the defensive line kind of shook it a little bit. And this is an interesting prospect we could take a look at in Lamar Gray. 6 foot 197, a man-to-man style corner at 21 years old, played at Notre Dame. Pretty solid 40, not very strong, but solid athletic build. He's got a balanced skill set, which is why I'm intrigued by him. C for zone and man coverage. Press is a B to a D. Catching, a little bit of some ability there, some tackling as well. I think he would be a solid depth guy, fringe roster kind of guy, just adding more depth to that group. We will add Lamar Gray, and he ends up being a C+ grade. True talent 180. We got him 189. I think that's pretty good. They question his speed for the NFL. I thought it was fine. Average recognition leads to inconsistent play. Raw man defender. But he is a hidden dev, and that I will take. Now, just a few picks later, we do have our 7th round pick, and there was 2 guys I was taking a look at, and we do have 2 more selections. We'll see if they are available, one of which was an offensive lineman, Dylan Pritchett. He would very much just be a backup for the left tackle position. That is where his nature is. 6'7", 315, 23 years old, out of Arizona State. Not the strongest guy. Again, this would be a backup, but he's got B's across the board as long as the power is a B for pass block protection, and I think that would be a solid backup here for a 7th round pick. That looks pretty good to me. We'll add on Pritchett, and he is true 267. We got 193. Former high school power forward. So he should have some athleticism. Again, we have some booze coming in. A normal dev, 78 strength. We'll see if he's able to adjust. With our final selection here, there was one position I was hoping to address. We haven't till this point. Is there someone at tight end that we think could do a job? The guy I was looking at, it looks like he did end up being selected. Looking for someone who can provide a little bit of some run blocking as well as some decent hands. And there is someone like Madison Turner here. Same name as our head coach, at least first name, Madison Boston. Does have B for catching traffic, B for run blocking. We're just very uncertain about these route running. The 7th round pick, we could look to take a shot on him if we wanted to. 6'3", 253, 23 years old, out of Ohio State. Second fastest, at least of who's remaining. This might adjust as we move along, not quite sure. A injury rating, that's pretty big for our tight end spot. And at the worst, we only currently have 2 tight ends on roster. I wouldn't be against taking a swing here at Madison Turner. Could he be worse than the 267? He's not. 243, we got him 202. Drops, easy catches, that's not what I'm looking to see. Needs to refine intermediate route running, we knew that would be the case. Tends to struggle with contested catches. We might have whiffed on this one. Only time will tell. Well, that does bring us to the end here of our draft, so we will advance to the end. Take a look at who we picked up. And overall, it appears to be a pretty solid draft class. 74, 74, 72, 71, hit on a 73 in Hartwell. Our lowest ended up being Taylor Wooden. Then we bounced back a little bit with Gray, 67. We got Pritchett, 64, and a 65 tight end I don't think is all too bad. Going individually, Jeff Polk, is he the quarterback of this team's future with hidden dev? And, you know, he's got to work on some of those ratings. Short is at a solid starting spot. Medium and deep, they could use some work. With the speed at a 78, is he the guy of our future? Well, we didn't have to trade up and lose many, if any, assets for him. I think it's doable. We'll take a look at how he looks in the preseason. With our second pick, we got Terrence Yancey, another 74. He is a normal dev, and he looks very similar to what we have in Daxton Hill. So perhaps these two will be battling for some playing time out there. Might give it to the vet at first, but Yancey, I think, could improve given playing time. 98 injuries, always good to see. Then when the guard ended up going 2 picks before us to the Falcons, we go with Rakeem Griffey, a 72 overall normal dev, and he's got 79 for finesse, 73 for block shedding. We'll probably move to a left or right end spot, especially with that 80 speed. But overall, that is some pretty solid depth that we have to start building. Another selection that was a little bit of a surprise, wasn't planning on going corner, but George Boss was sitting there at 6'4", 71 overall, another normal dev. And he does have pretty good man and press to begin. Zone is lagging well behind, and with that speed and tackling, perhaps he's someone that could look to transition and maybe play a little bit of some strong safety for us. Zone is very much behind, so he wouldn't be a starter at that spot, but is a solid option. Arguably the biggest surprise of this draft was Rashawn Hartwell, 73 hidden gem. And he is pretty well balanced in the simple run and pass blocking. The power obviously lagging behind in both, but he's got the finesse there. Strength is at an 87, so it's not awful. Transition him to center. Let's see what he looks like. And that does lower his overall. He's down to a 70. We'll play around with him. He'll probably still be a backup on both sides, but is someone that we could definitely look to see some playing time. If we can find some blowout games, get him on the field and start progressing him. He only needs 2,500 XP to see upgrades. Now, this is where we're definitely going to start dipping into more of the bottom part of our roster. Taylor Wooden has, again, a decent starting spot for a rotational backup with a block shedding at a 73, power moves at a 70. Strength is there. Again, he's one that fits more of the DT with that 66 speed, being 316, so we'll adjust him as well. And he does move up a little bit now, 66 overall. I feel like that is a better fit for him. Now, as for our late round hidden gem, we have Lamar Gray, 67 overall, but he is balanced, and we can look to mold him in any certain way. Speed is a little bit low, 88, but he does have 95 acceleration. If he works his way to a slot corner position, which isn't that far behind his scheme fit right now of man-to-man, he could potentially grow and be a starter at a latter part of his career. Now, as for Dylan Pritchett, what it looked like we missed on this selection, 64 overall normal dev. And still, it's a solid building point for a pure pass blocker. Lead isn't too bad, but the strength is on the lower side. Again, he transitioned. He was a high school power forward. Put on some weight. We'll see if he can make that full adjustment. If he was faster and maybe had hands. Let's see, what is his speed? 68. Yeah, not going to be anywhere close. I would say maybe try him at tight end. The actual tight end we selected, Madison Turner, 65 overall, normal dev. And, you know, he's got, I think, some tight end 3, tight end 4 numbers here. Nothing too bad, and fills out a position spot that we did have to fill one way or the other. We get a 4-year contract here. We're looking to compare quarterback. Seth Tobin, he ends up going first overall. He is a hidden dev, but a true 71 overall. Take a look at his ratings, and they are slightly better, but if you take off the pluses here, 82 for deep and 81 for short, not that far ahead, but the speed was definitely a cause of concern for me. The Giants ended up going with Thad Cousins. He was the top 5 projection I was considering, and he's 74 overall, so the same as our guy, also a hidden dev. And again, slightly better when it comes to the deep accuracy, short sitting around the same, and that is with a boost. But we have the faster quarterback in this category, so I still think we found the best quarterback. Or so I thought, but actually in the second round, Will Allen, he ends up being selected by the Bucks. He's 1 overall higher, a hidden dev. He's the scrambler, and the accuracies are very similar. He's just got more speed. But overall, I still think we did pretty well. Again, given this class here, Adkins, who ended up going late in the 3rd round, a 73 overall. There was 72. Aiden Truman ended up going in the 4th round to the Cowboys. Again, I would have selected him in the 4th round if he was still there. We would have had a solid backup quarterback. Cousins we saw at the 74. Allen 75. Ourselves was 74. Kevin Pounds ended up being a 74 as well, going to the Cardinal. Another hidden dev, so no matter what, it looks like you were going to get a hidden dev quarterback. It just depended on where you wanted your accuracies. And the one player I was hoping we would get but missed out on by just 2 selections, George Davis. He is a hidden dev, 74 overall, but we got a guy very similar. And in fact, they're pretty similar across the board here. We just got to pick him at a later spot in the draft, so we probably save a little bit of money in that aspect. And overall, looking at the draft itself, I'm pretty happy with where we ended up. Last thing, we'll go ahead and check overall here for the entire draft. What was the highest overall? A 79 safety in Terrence Bowie, someone we could have maybe picked up in the latter part of the first round. He is a hidden dev, went to the Dolphins, but again is very similar to the safety we ended up selecting. So while the overalls might be a little bit starker of a difference, the players themselves are pretty similar. Past him, you do have a running back in Demarius Roberts, 78, a corner, 77, went in the second round. And one of the higher overall guys was a DT and Ramon Saunders, who went in the third round. So there was talent very much spread throughout this draft class. Fourth round, DT Claiborne, 75 overall. Fourth round seemed to be about that endpoint for some of the more potential starting caliber guys. That is where we will look to bring this episode to a close. Now, we do still have Trevor Lawrence here on roster. I will look to move him at the beginning of next episode. We will be moving on from Trevor Lawrence. Polk or Smith will be the starting quarterback moving into our next season. Again, we saw with the play of Lawrence that bad quarterback play, we could still get to the playoffs with our strong running game. If we compare Smith and Polk, throw power is definitely better with Polk. Short accuracy is better. Not as much when it gets to the medium and deep. So we'll see what all Polk can do. Might play a few little bits here and there of the preseason. Put that into the start of next episode as we declare who our starting quarterback will be. So to make sure you don't miss out on how we move forward here, Coach Boston has himself a new quarterback and several other possible key starters. What other moves might we make as we get this team down to the 53? Hit that bell icon in the bottom right or scroll down, hit the sub button and tap that bell icon so you're notified of when these videos go live. This series every single Tuesday and Thursday, so we will start the next season rather shortly. We will see you then. As it appears, we've got Mahomes in week 1.